Hello there, it's me, Brian of London, in my forest. Forest Talks podcast, brianoflondon.me. And I've got, the Beatles playing in the background, if you can hear it. Don't know how well that will be cut out. And we're still in the aftermath of this Covington students, the Catholic students, fallout. All started, or at least kicked off, by this Native American, Native Indian, Indian American, indigenous American, whatever you want to call him, Nathan Phillips. Now, I don't think he intended to kick off a storm as big as the one he got. Maybe he wanted a small Twitter fight, raise himself a few $1,000s on it, but what he kicked off was massive. But it also appears that it was kicked off by this group called the Hebrew Israelites, who are a black group in America, who the Southern Poverty Law Center, who I don't like at all, regard as a hate group. And for them to call out black people is something unusual. So what exactly is the beef of the Hebrew Israelites? As best I can tell, they advocate a view that the real Jews are all blacks. And this lets me explain how I get to call myself an indigenous Jew. And what is the concept of indigenous Judaism? And I really came into this whole argument from my good friend Ryan Bellerose, who is a Métis. That's his tribe. He's from the Métis tribe. Now, the Métis area is kind of in Canada today, but he is an indigenous American. He's from the continent of America. He's a native people. First Nation, actually, is what they say in Canada. But he explains better than anybody else I've ever known the whole concept of who are indigenous and what it is to be an indigenous person. And Jews in Israel fit the bill 100%. Whether we are black, whether we are brown, whether we are white, pink, green, red, blue, doesn't matter. Color and skin and DNA is just one component. He always describes indigenous identity as five points on a hand. Land is absolutely key to indigenous identity, and land. The whole twist and the whole reason why Europe is going through this kind of upheaval over whether it's okay to be a nationalist is because what they've done is, now America did this first. Actually, America is the first real modern nation built. Well, not first. America is built on a non-land race link identity. The American identity is rooted in your Constitution. So you can come to America and be American. That was the idea. Whether you are an Italian American or a Jewish American or an African American, the idea was that you were all American because you were united by common values. And those values did come from Christianity. And from Christianity came from Judaism. Your country's built on Judeo-Christianity and the civilization that flows from it. So land is a key part of indigenous identity. We have that in Israel. We have a strong ties to the land. Everything we do in Judaism, there's a geographic component. We've been talking about Jerusalem since we started. The next one after land, and this is not actually in an order of precedence, okay? DNA. There is a DNA component oftentimes to indigenous identity, but it's not the only one. That's the point. It's one of five. So we've got land, DNA, then you have culture. Culture can be learned. This is how you bring your kids up. This is the traditions and the ceremonies that you pass on from generation to generation. Your learned books. The Torah is our culture and our tradition. Land, DNA, culture. Now, the other one that's deeply and closely tied to that is language. We have an indigenous language, which is Hebrew. It's an Aramaic language. You can go and learn all you can see the roots of it, how it developed and how Arabic is related, and it doesn't matter. We own Hebrew. And when Jews came to be able to be in the position to rebuild a modern state, fortunately, the Jews who reformed this state on the land of Israel that was always our land chose Hebrew. It was a controversial choice. But by reforming our nation as a modern nation to speak a modern Hebrew language, which is so closely tied to the language of the Torah, when my kids, who are fluent in Hebrew, obviously, look at at a picture of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they can read every word. You know that it's an unfamiliar sort of style of language, but the language is the same. The Hebrew is the same. We are speaking ancient biblical Hebrew. Obviously, we've got lots of new words, machshev, we can say computer, but these are all sort of created within the concept of a language. And that language ties us Jews together because it's the language of prayer that we used in exile for 1,000 years, for multi-thousand years, for 2,000 years since we were kicked out by the Romans. So that language didn't die, but it wasn't a conversational language till we brought it back. So land, DNA or blood, culture and language together. The fifth one is spirituality. And the spirituality of Judaism is obvious. It's the underlying spirituality of Christianity too. So, but again, these are 5 elements of indigenous identity. It doesn't mean that every indigenous person has all 5, or they'll be up and down in a continuum. But to call yourselves or to think that you are an indigenous peoples, you have to have some connection to your land. You have to have a language that you fought to keep alive. And that's why one of the first things that a colonizer will do when trying to crush an indigenous people is to forbid the language. You see this all over the place. You've seen this throughout history. Ban the language. Ban people from speaking Celtic or Welsh or... This is an act of colonization. Why does most of the Middle East speak Arabic when they had indigenous languages before then? Because Arabic was imposed upon them as the conquering culture. Retaking Hebrew back here, we could have reformed Israel and chosen Arabic. It would have been a lingua franca of more of the people, some of the people here, especially the Jews who fled Arab lands. But we didn't, because decolonization meant we have to pick Hebrew as our language. And that's the only language that matters. So the black Hebrews, Israelites in America, complete fraud and phony. There are black Jews. We brought many of them from Ethiopia to here. And there are black Jews, there are brown Jews. The blood, the component of blood that makes up an indigenous identity is just one component. It's important. But as we do take converts, I mean, Trump's daughter, for example, obviously DNA is not the only component that matters. So anybody who tells you that white Jews who spent 1,000 years in Europe are not real Jews, bullshit. They come here to be Jewish. You are Jewish. It doesn't matter what your level of expression of these components are. If you feel the affinity to being Jewish, then you feel the affinity to this land, and you are at home and you are indigenous in the land of Israel. That is the point. So these it's good that some people are looking at these black Hebrew Israelites critically. They should. That's at the core of a lot of the activity that I do, is talking about this indigenous identity which just Jews share, and which Judaism, not just the Jewish people as individuals, but Judaism and the collective people of Judah, the tribes of Judah, the tribes of Israel. That's who we are, and that's why it's deeply rooted to the land of Israel, and that's all of the land of Israel. And green lines drawn on maps in 1948 make no difference to where Jews are indigenous in Israel. Anyway, this is me, Brian of London, doing one of my forest talks. This will go out as a podcast up on YouTube later. Thanks very much for watching. Check out brianoflondon.me. Please go there, subscribe, stick in your email address, sign up for updates. Follow me on Twitter. The Shire Network News old archives are going up. I'm going to try and put 3 a week up. I'm really enjoying listening to them back because I'm listening to them before I put them up. It's fascinating. So follow Shire Network News, follow me, and I'll see you the next time. Look out. Have a good week, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. Bye.